Well, good morning, and thank you all for being here. This is where security policy and economics join up. On this panel, we're going to be talking about building a common defense, U.S.-India national security cooperation. And I have with me an exceptional panel, starting with Dr. Joe Felter, who's the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, Rick Edwards, the Executive Vice President of Lockheed Martin, Banmali Agrawala, the President, Defense and Aerospace of the Tata Group, and Dr. Prat Kumar, Vice President of Boeing and the F-15 Program Manager. With that, if I can request Joe, please go ahead and give us a little bit on the geopolitical and government linkages between US and India and the implications of COMCASA and major defense partner status, and of course, anything else.
Great. Well, thanks, Toby. And thanks. It's a real honor to be here. Thanks to USIBC for the invitation. Again, it's a pretty auspicious group you've assembled, and it's an honor for me to represent our Defense Department here today. It's great to see a lot of friends and colleagues. Been to India 9 times in this capacity. And Toby, last saw you in Bangalore, had a great trip to Dynamatic, which I thought was just a great example of just the kind of quality we're looking for, and congratulations on all you're doing there. So I would argue, strengthening the U.S.-India strategic partnership, it's really critical to the U.S. ability to execute its national defense strategy, and as well as it's critical to India's ability to assume its natural role as a leader in the Indian Ocean region. And to assume that for us to execute our national defense strategy, for India to assume that role, I would argue that defense cooperation is the way we're going to build this strategic partnership. So in my few minutes here, I thought I'd discuss why U.S.-India national security and defense cooperation is so critical to both the U.S. and its NDS and India as it assumes its natural role. Maybe do some highlights of some recent examples of the successes of us building this defense cooperation. And then talk about the way ahead for U.S.-India defense cooperation, maybe identify some of the challenges and opportunities that we're going to have. So if you're familiar with our national defense strategy, it's very clear that the Indo-Pacific region is our priority region. It's not just because it's huge. Some of you may recall Admiral Harris, now our ambassador to South Korea. He would call it, it extends from Hollywood to Bollywood, from polar bears to penguins. But there's a lot of other reasons why it's our priority region. Certainly, I think if you look at our national defense strategy, the bottom line up front, as we call it in the military and the Pentagon, is, despite our optimism at the end of the Cold War for the trajectory of Russia and China, as far as going down the path of democracy, and maybe as China's economy developed, the liberalization and reforms we see, the truth is we haven't seen that yet. We've seen very different things, and the era of great power competition is indeed back. And it behooves us to treat China and Russia not for who we want them to be, but for who they are. So we are in long-term competition, and certainly in this case with China. That doesn't mean conflict. We want to cooperate where we can, and our interests overlap, but we're going to compete and hopefully compete effectively where we must. And if we're going to compete effectively, we're going to have to do it with allies and partners. And that's really another key aspect of our national defense strategy, one of our lines of effort. So we're going to have to compete with allies and partners. And in this priority region of the Indo-Pacific, there's no more important relationship, no more important partnership than the U.S.-India partnership. So certainly a strong India net security provider in the region, that's in the U.S. interest and that's in India's interest. And we intend to keep moving forward in that direction. So let me just highlight some of the real important accomplishments I think we can see in the U.S.-India strategic partnership, and specifically in our defense cooperation. Back in 2016, India was designated a major defense partner. This is back when Secretary Ash Carter was our defense secretary. And I think since then we've really made this more than a slogan, if you will, but we've made it real. We put meat on the bones. And I'd like to just highlight just a few things we've done just in this past year, as far as how we've increased military-to-military cooperation, done new exercises, information sharing, intelligence sharing. But last year, just about this time, we renamed Pacific Command Indo-Pacific Command. And this was very significant. It was a recognition that this region is now, it's really bound by the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean. We can't separate them. And it certainly was a nod towards the important role that India plays in the region. Soon after that, we had our historic ministerial level 2+2 in New Delhi back in September. Secretary Mattis and Secretary Pompeo went over there and met with their counterparts, Minister Sitaraman and Swadesh. significant. It's the first time the U.S. and India has ever had a meeting at this level, and it's certainly the first time India has ever had a meeting with any country at this level. We only do this with our closest allies, so this is a real indicator of the importance we place on this relationship. At this ministerial, significantly, we passed the Communications Compatibility and Security Agreement, which Toby mentioned. Landmark event. This is many years in the making, and many of you here have already seen the benefits that this agreement has allowed us as far as interoperability, real-time intelligence sharing, and it was just a real significant contribution. We announced a new tri-service amphibious exercise, which was significant. So 2+2 real significant. Maybe less tangible, but as important, I think, of an accomplishment over this past year is the increasing trust that we've built with our Indian counterparts. And I'll have to give a nod to Secretary Mattis personally, who invested personal effort into building this relationship. Minister Sitaraman came out to visit Washington in December of last year, and we just rolled out the red carpet. She visited Washington, she went out to California, visited our Defense Innovation Unit, and out to Indo-PACOM in Hawaii. Very significant efforts in building the trust in this relationship, which we can't understate the significance of. As we all know, Secretary Mattis departed mid-December last year. I think there was a concern that how much of the focus and priority of the U.S.-India relationship was wrapped up on the defense side in our defense secretary. Well, we can assure you, as I was privy to Secretary Shanahan's remarks when he first called Minister Sitaraman, his then counterpart, and he said words akin to this, that I was an understudy of Secretary Mattis for a year and a half. Everything he put into place, we're going to continue moving forward on. The priority of the defense relationship with the U.S. and India continues and will continue to grow. So we've just taken off from there. Soon after Acting Secretary Shanahan came on board, we had the inaugural, what we call the mini 2+2, an intersessional 2+2 at the Assistant Secretary level, so try to keep that momentum going on these key issues over in Delhi. So let me just mention a bit about the way ahead we have for defense cooperation. Certainly we have the COMCASA signed. We want to operationalize it. We want to unlock its potential. And there's so much we can do now that this agreement is signed as far as interoperability and information sharing, intelligence sharing. That was one enabling agreement. We've got a couple more. We want to pass one that's going to really allow greater industry cooperation, and we're very close to getting that one across the line. We have another that's going to help allow increased geospatial information sharing, and we're going to hopefully get that one across the line soon after. We want to deepen the complexities of our existing exercises, such as Malabar and others. Of note, we hope to have our first tri-service bilateral exercise with India later this year. And again, as Secretary Mattis started, we want to continue these senior leader level engagements. We anticipate that Acting Secretary Shanahan, potentially confirmed Secretary Shanahan, and Secretary Pompeo will be traveling to India this fall to meet with their newly appointed counterparts for this year's ministerial level 2+2. Let me hit on defense trade a bit, since I think that is a topic that's of special interest to this group. I think the key to developing India's defense capabilities and increasing interoperability is going to be increased defense trade. I was at Bangalore at Aero India this year and was impressed upon us in our U.S. delegation, which was the largest delegation, I think, ever to Bangalore, the air show. I just saw significant defense trade opportunities are. I may be a little bit biased, but I would argue that U.S. solutions, and I think so resonate well with many in this crowd, they're not only the best and most technologically advanced and quality, but they are combat tested and corruption free. And additionally, they're not just an investment in the best system, they're an investment in this all-important relationship which is in our mutual interest to continue to build. And we are on a positive trajectory. We went from about zero in 2008 to over $15 billion in defense trade this year. Aircraft, maritime patrol, aircraft, helicopters, howitzers, many significant systems. This year we've got 35 active cases, over $9 billion. And significantly, one example of how far we progressed is our most advanced systems are on offer. India is the first non-treaty ally to be offered an armed Category 1 UAS with the Sea Guardian. And that's really a statement of how far our relationship has gone as manifested in our defense trade. So a few challenges and opportunities. I'll just highlight a few and we can hit them in Q&A. But we want to continue sharing our most advanced technology with India. And we understand that it's a sovereign country going to make its own choices. We just hope that when they make those choices, that the opportunity to continue to share our very best technology is weighed in those decisions. The fighter competition. This is a great opportunity to demonstrate the commitment to our strategic partnership. And we hope that one or two U.S. solutions will make it through the ringer there. And lastly, we want to continue to be a reliable partner. The U.S. Defense Department has made great investments in trying to become a reliable and trusted partner, which has enabled so much with India. And the DoD remains committed to building this trust and establishing itself as India's partners of choice. So let me just close by saying that, objectively speaking, I think the U.S.-India relationship is one of, if not the most consequential relationships in the region or in the world today. I mean, and defense cooperation is going to be a key to building and strengthening that. I used to teach international relations courses at university, and some of the theories there tell you that if countries' interests are aligned, they're going to cooperate. And I would argue that aligned interest is a necessary but not sufficient condition. People make it happen. People in military, in government, in industry make it happen. So all of you have a role in building this relationship. Stakes are high. I would say that the future of this region is going to be largely determined on the quality of the U.S.-India relationship. And defense cooperation is going to be key to building that, and we all have a role in advancing that. So stay in the fight. The stakes are high. Let's move there together. And I'll end there.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. And shifting gears, if I can request Banmali, if you could share with us implications of Make in India and how reforms in India are affecting opportunities for the cooperation between the U.S. and India.
Sure. Thanks, Shobi. I think first, let me just kind of start by, and over the last, yesterday and even today, we've heard the importance of Indo-US relations, how much of progress one has made over the last decade or so. But I think particularly when it comes to defense, there's a lot that's happened, but it doesn't get spoken about or it's not really known in the public domain. But right from personnel exchanges, collaborations, cooperation between all the three services, joint exercises, etc., I think there's a lot that's going on behind the scene, which I think we need to recognize. Further, all the three arms of the defense forces in India do have significant US platforms. We have the P-8 maritime patrol aircraft, the C-130J and C-17 transport aircraft, the M777 howitzers, Apache, Chinook. These are all US platforms. So my first point is that there is already a very deep engagement that is on there. Second, I think as again has been discussed over the last couple of days, the opportunity as far as India is concerned is tremendous. Fast-growing economy and our defense requirements are pretty significant. So there is a clear opportunity. And from a business standpoint, from a corporate standpoint, it's something that we need to seize and see what's the most that we can do with it. So the question therefore arises, how do we go about it? And I would say that the first thing is that I think from an Indian government perspective, I think decision-making when it comes to defense, procurement, etc., one certainly expects a lot faster decision-making to happen. One sees that already in motion. I think the sense of urgency is clearly visible with the new government. And again, as has been said, with Prime Minister Modi coming back with such a substantial mandate, the emphasis on speed is visible. And I think it will also translate into defense procurement. That's the expectation clearly that we have from the industry side. Now, when it comes to partnering with Indian companies and the Make in India dimension that you were referring to, the key point I'd like to highlight is that defense technology is perhaps at the extreme end of sophistication and, let's say, challenge. And therefore, it is unrealistic to expect that you can switch it on with the flick of a switch overnight. These partnerships, or you may call transfer of technology and so on, these develop over time. And I can share our own experience within the Tata Group, where we do have long-standing partnerships with partners like Lockheed, partners like Boeing and GE and Honeywell. I think these have been built over time. Over time, there's been a trust that's developed. There's been a certain understanding that's developed, a feel of what does it really mean to participate in defense and in aerospace, which is, again, another, I would say, added layer of sophistication. Do you have the right attitude and mindset to go about that? And I think this dimension is usually missed out, and I think it's very important to understand that time needs to be invested in building these relationships and partnerships. I'd just also like to kind of finish by saying that within India, we are also working on developing an ecosystem that how do you get skilled talent to be able to kind of fulfill this need as and when it develops? How do you get the right attitudes and mindsets to make sure that, especially when it comes to aerospace, which is where there's a significant opportunity that lies ahead of us, that we're actually able to capture those opportunities. So again, we need to devote and spend that time in building those capabilities. I think we need to look at this as a win-win opportunity for both countries. The Indian requirement is clearly an incremental demand, and therefore it will benefit both the Indian side as well as the US side. And I think if you approach it with that perspective, the entire thing about making in India, how do you partner, how do you kind of build facilities, and ultimately also plug into the global supply chain that will benefit the partners as well, I think are very natural fallouts that arise out of that. So I think great opportunity, and I think we really look forward to making the most of it with the new government that's coming.
Thank you, Banmali. And in fact, as you talked about building the ecosystem, I think one of the interesting things that's happening in this new ecosystem of defense and aerospace in India is companies like ours, like the Tata Group and Dynamatic, while in the traditional way would be looked at as competitors, we actually work very closely together, we cooperate, we make parts for each other, and I think that is a very interesting ecosystem that's building up. Thank you. May I invite Rick, if you can give us an idea of the regulatory and political conditions that your company looks forward to when you consider foreign partnerships and investments.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Toby. My pleasure to be here this morning. When you heard the ambassadors this morning talk about deregulation and reducing bureaucracy, I can tell you from our experience that's absolutely happening. Things are moving with a better pace. There used to be lots of go from one office to the other and who was in charge and who could approve something. Almost 8 years ago, we started 2 joint ventures with Tata and started building helicopter cabins and the tail of the C-130 there. And out of that joint venture, we've exported about $800 million worth of product out of India. And part of that was that we were going to liquidate some of our offset obligations. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of meetings we went to trying to figure out who could approve those things. And the result was that nothing ever seemed to get approved. In the last 2 years, I actually mentioned this to Prime Minister Modi when I saw him in our last mission to India. And it's amazing what happens when you do that. All of a sudden, the meetings happened and things started going through the system. So it's noticeable to industry that we're seeing the effort to reduce the bureaucracy and speed things through really improving. And that's vital to doing this. It costs companies a lot of money to do proposals, to set up facilities. And so that's very encouraging, and I am confident it's going to continue. From our standpoint, when you talk about the ease of doing business, we're signing contracts where we've got obligations certainly to deliver. And we've had a great partnership with Tata with 100% quality, on-time deliveries. And so you build that confidence that we announced earlier in the year that we were going to move the production of the F-16 wing to India. And that is a pretty complex assembly. And we gained that confidence because we're signing contracts. We just are about to sign with Bulgaria right now for more airplanes. And if that wing doesn't show up, that best I can figure, the plane's not going to fly. So we have to have confidence in our partners as we put increasingly complex assemblies into a country that they can do the work, that they can do it with high quality and on time. And that's a risk that everyone in our business looks at, and how do you manage that and how do you mitigate that? Because I will tell you, there were lots of countries that wanted to try to build that wing. And you have to have confidence that your partner is going to be able to execute and do it correctly. So India is doing this right. As we started off with less complex assemblies, we gained confidence in the ability to perform, and now we're going on, and when we bid our F-21 into the fighter competition, that will be Make in India. And we have the confidence that the partners we will have on that program will be able to execute it and build the airplane in India. And that comes about over years of relationships, getting confidence that we can do it. And I'll just tell you, when I was touring the factory at Tata a few months ago, there's a training program, and there's no qualified mechanics. You have to train them. You have to grow your own. And I was introduced to about a dozen women who had come from small villages and been trained in an apprenticeship program to build military standard, 100% quality harnesses that go inside of the C-130 structure. And they were building a perfect product on time, but had been raised out of poverty, now had very good jobs. Their commitment to doing the job the first time was evident when you spoke to them. They were proud, and now they are going back and have a job that helps support their entire family. And so, kudos to Tata for having that program where you really can bring people on board, educate them, and then give them a future. And that's part of this. Every country, when you buy our products, you should expect that the industrial piece of this provides benefit to India. That's not debatable any longer. And the days where we did offset projects and companies would build a shopping center or a hospital, those are all nice projects, but they don't raise the industrial base. They don't provide that long-term defense sustainment. And so the Make in India program, as it relates to defense, I think is taking hold, and industry supports it and understands that if we want India to buy our products, then we have to reciprocate and put high-quality technology and high-quality jobs into the country. And the business environment now in India makes that realistic and very reasonable, and we're excited to do business there.
Thank you, Rick. And just to refer to what you said earlier, you talked about 100% on-time delivery and great quality, and then you telescope down to the young ladies from the villages who do that great work. And I think that's what's really an opportunity, not just India as a market, but we've seen the wave of digitization coming out of India, software engineers. But more than just contributing mind space now, we have the ability to contribute men and women who are truly village artisans. And once we bring them onto good skilling programs, they're exceptional craftsmen. And so with that, I'd like to circle around to Prat. Prat's had a long stint as head of Boeing in India, and very few people can speak on this topic as Prat can. So if we can get you to speak, please.
Thank you, Toby, and it's great to be back among friends. So thank you for the opportunity to USIBC. Fantastic work over the years in strengthening the relationship. So great platform. Thanks for inviting me here. I'll pick up the thread from where Rick, Banmali, you left. Toby, Dynamatic is a globally competitive defense manufacturing firm. So is Tata's. The reason you have Lockheed, Boeing, Airbus, Sikorsky, name it, GE, partnering with you because you produce world-class quality product at a competitive, affordable price point. How do you achieve that? You achieve that by having a distinctive know-how, which goes well beyond just build-to-print drawings. In many cases, your companies have actually improved our engineering. I've seen firsthand, time and again, the contribution that comes from your team is actually advances the state of the art for us. You bring to the table the know-how for quality systems. You bring to the table how do you actually get the defense manufacturing done with zero defects, right? So that's number one. Second thing, both you talked about, is a skilled workforce. That is essential to sophisticated manufacturing like defense and aerospace. You have sophisticated deep training program for training frontline factory workers, essential for success in this globally competitive world, manufacturing world. And third piece is that you vote with your wallet, you invest. It doesn't come without investment. So it's about technology, know-how, skilled manpower, and it's about investment. Now, if you go back to the principal defense policy for improving India's defense industrial base readiness, what is that? That's defense offsets. If you go to that and look at defense offsets, does it address any of the three things that made you successful? The facts are no. Is there any benefit, any incentive to bring technology and know-how to India for private companies? None. DRDO? Maybe. Private company? None. Can you claim credit for skilling workforce in India for offsets? No. Is there a multiplier for investment? No. It's treated as at par with buying stuff from India. Why would you make investment in that? So when you come to a point when both sides are equally disappointed with defense policy, you heard about the administrative challenges of getting defense offset credits, and India is disappointed because it has not delivered the intended value of this program. There's no surprise. It's disconnected with the fundamental principles of creating a globally competitive manufacturing base. It doesn't address the know-how and technology. It doesn't address the skill. It doesn't address the capital. So, kind of in my humble opinion, in face of those facts, it's either time to offset the offset or reform it dramatically. I'll stop there.
Well, thank you, Prat, and thank you, everyone. I think this panel has really brought to today the whole idea of how this partnership can actually enhance both economics as well as the security cooperation of these two great nations. Thank you very much. We're done with time? You're the boss. All right, so I think we just want to be a little efficient with time, and we could possibly take one or two questions if there are. Yeah? Okay, thank you very much.